So people are always asking me how I homeschool this many children without losing my mind. How do I fit it in? I have a ton of people that I know in real life ask me these questions, but also a lot of you have left YouTube comments on my videos asking me to do a rundown of what my day looks like. So today I'm going to give you the total rundown of what our homeschool days look like from the first pencil scratch all the way until we're done for the day. So this isn't going to be a typical day in the life video because I'm not going to be showing you any footage of my children doing this. This is going to just be, it's going to be no fluff. It's going to be just me talking to you, laying out exactly what we do. You don't need to see my children pretend to write in math workbooks in order to understand how we do this. So please excuse the lack of B-roll, and please excuse the lack of, scripted, beautifully produced video. That's really not what I do here. And I really don't have the time to do that sort of video, but I can sit down and share with you what my day looks like. So if you are struggling to bring order and routine into your own homeschool, you really need to watch my masterclass. It's called The Framework I Wish I Had 18 years ago when my homeschool was falling apart. And it's free. You can get the link for that in the description box below. Okay. So the anchored morning is what I'm going to call this next section. And again, these times that I give, they're pretty much what we stick to, but it could be a little bit earlier or a little bit later by about 5 minutes or so. So at 7:30, my children are allowed to get out of their rooms. So they can be awake before 7:30, but they have to stay in their rooms because we are a family that values our sleep, and we also are a family that values order. So they can stay in their rooms and read if they're awake before 7:30. But at 7:30, they get up and they get dressed and they come downstairs. Now, the first thing that they are supposed to be doing is their math work. And I'm sure you're thinking, well, Ashley, when do you teach them the math lesson? That actually happens in the afternoon of the previous day. And I'll get to that once we get down to the afternoon. But right now we're talking about the morning. So they get up, they get dressed, they come downstairs, and they immediately get started on their math work. They know exactly which assignment they're supposed to be doing. And they also understand that the sooner they get started on their math, the sooner they get to be done with math. So I'm usually already downstairs. I might be fixing breakfast at this point or finishing up my own breakfast. And so the children, if they need help with math, I'm right there. I try to keep the breakfast, it's a hot breakfast unless it's smoothies and it's a cold breakfast, but I keep the breakfast simple. I'm not doing elaborate things like waffles or pancakes on weekday mornings. I've said in another video before, usually we will have oatmeal with turkey sausage on the side, or we'll have scrambled eggs and toast or fried eggs and toast. I do keep bran flakes and Greek yogurt on hand in case we just get started late and we just need something super quick, or we use that also Sundays before church. So for that first bit of time, I'm cooking breakfast, I'm helping the kids with math as they need it, but then at 8 o'clock, that's the goal time to sit down at the breakfast table. At this point, my high school kids have to get up, my middle school kids have to get up. Really, it's the younger boys, the 9 and 10-year-old and the 5-year-old, sometimes the 11-year-old that get up early at 7:30. But at 8 o'clock, that's when I want to be seated at the breakfast table. Now, I've already had my breakfast at this point, so I'm not eating. What I'm actually doing is teaching the Christian studies that we do for the day. So what we do for Christian studies is every weekday morning, I'm reading the proverb of the day. So as you know, Proverbs has 31 chapters, and a lot of the months have 31 days. So I'm just reading the chapter of Proverbs that coincides with the day of the week. And the children know that they need to be listening carefully because I'm expecting them to tell me something, to tell me a verse back, or to ask me a question, or to tell me something that stood out to them. This is how I make sure that they're paying attention, and this trains their brain to listen to something and retain some information. So after we've gone around the table and everyone has said what they need or want to say or ask, I'll usually expound. I'll pick a verse as I'm reading to talk about a little bit. And so I will talk about that to the children and tell them what I want them to learn from this verse. And we have been doing this for probably since my oldest children were around 8 years old. So this practice has been going on in our home for over a decade. The children have heard the Proverbs read, the whole chapter read each month. So that's 12 times a year for over a decade. So, Proverbs is called the wisdom chapter, and I want my children to get wisdom. So this is a fantastic way to do it. This really helps to get that, the Bible into their hearts and into their souls and minds. So we do that next. So after the proverb, then we go into Memoria Press Christian Studies. So the Christian Studies series is really kind of upper elementary level, and there's 4 different levels. We do that all together. And sometimes we finish in less than a year, and so we just go ahead onto the next level. I do the reading, we discuss it all together around the table verbally. We don't write it out for this, but it's, we have the conversations together, we look at the maps, we work on the drill questions. Memoria is fantastic in that they give you drill questions for each chapter that you should have your children memorizing so that information stays in their brain. So we practice the drill questions. That generally takes 10 to 20 minutes, depending on whether or not I need to read the passage that day or not. And then we go into catechism practice. And so we use the Westminster Children's Shorter Catechism. And, it's made up of questions and answers. And most of the answers that the children are memorizing are pretty short, 1 to 2 sentences. There are some, as they're memorizing the 10 Commandments within the catechism, that are much longer because it goes into a detailed explanation. And that just takes more time to memorize. But, we're almost through it at this point. I think probably by the end of this year, we'll probably have the whole thing memorized. And so when we get to that point, I'm not exactly sure what we're going to start working on. We might just work on the actual shorter catechism after that. But it has been a fantastic tool in my children's spiritual tool belt because, the questions are like, who made you? God. What else did God make? God made all things. Why did God make you in all things? For his own glory. So it's all of these questions that they may come across, that someone may ask them, that they may be asking themselves, and they have an answer that is based on scripture. And so I feel like that is a super valuable part of their education, that they get that they're catechized in that. I think that it was Vodi Bakum who once said that your children are being catechized either by you or by the world. And that really hit home. So I want to make sure that my husband and I are the ones catechizing our children so that they are not catechized by the world, because that's not what I'm doing here. Okay, so after we do the catechism, then we pray, and then it's time for morning chores. So morning chores, these are the chores that get done in our house in the morning. So table gets cleared off, table gets wiped down, and the floor around the table gets swept. The morning dishes get done. All of the laundry from the day before gets brought down to the laundry room, and all of the bathroom trash cans are emptied. So this happens every day. This actually happens on the weekends too, along with other chores. But this happens every day. The chore assignments stay the same. We do not rotate chores in our house. That is madness. And so the kids know. They know who's doing what. They know that it needs to be done, and they do it quickly. And then we do our best to make it to the school table right around 9 a.m. Okay, so this next section I'm just going to call mid-morning academics, and this starts between 9 and 9:15. And the way that we start this time section is with our morning recitations. So Memoria Press, again, is fantastic because they have recitation questions already made up for you that are based off of what the child is learning that week. And also they build in review from previous years. And so, it tells you week 1, here's 5 questions. Week 2, here's however many questions. And so I take the time and I do this. So my upcoming 4th graders, I do them together because it's the same level. But then my 7th grader does his. My upcoming 9th grader is still working on memorizing the poem Horatius at the Bridge from last year, so he will be doing recitation with me until he has that poem finished. But we do that first thing. And so while I'm doing recitation with one grade level, the other grade levels will be working on independent work. If they haven't finished their math, they're working on their math. If they finish that, then they're working on cursive, or they're working on grammar, or they're working on spelling that they can do independently. Everybody has independent work that they can do without me right there. And so that is what they're working on while they're waiting for their recitation turn. At the very beginning of the year, when we're just starting out, recitation can be done between 5 and 10 minutes. Now, once we hit mid-year, I'd like to review a lot because I don't want my kids just to memorize it for 1 week and then forget it. I want them to memorize it all. And so by mid-year, this is taking longer. And by the end of the year, it probably takes 45 minutes to an hour. But to me, that is time that is well spent because, again, I'm not just teaching this information to my children so that it is in one ear long enough for them to take a test and score well and then out the other. I want this information to be sticky. So that's why it's worth it to me to spend however much time we need to work on recitation every day. Now, after we're done with recitation, we move into Latin. So at this point, we've gotten math done, we've gotten Christian studies done, and we've gotten recitation done. Now it's time for Latin. I like to get all of the toughest subjects done in the morning. So Latin comes next. Now for my upcoming 4th graders, Latin probably takes 30 minutes or less. For my 7th grader, he probably needs a full hour of Latin, but he's actually going to be taking Latin with Memoria Academy this year. But I will be helping him and making sure that he's getting his worksheets done, making sure that he's doing flashcards. So that's what he will be doing during this time of the day, which will be working on those worksheets. I will be grading them and I will be quizzing him on his flashcards so that I can stay involved and know exactly how well he's doing. My little guy, George, he is going to be in kindergarten this year and he doesn't start Latin yet. So I'll have him working on probably just some worksheets, some phonics worksheets during this Latin time. After Latin, we go ahead and start working on composition. Now, my upcoming 4th graders, they did do some composition last year in 3rd grade, working through IEW's, what's it called? It's whatever their first book is called. I can't remember it right now. I'll put a little picture up here, but I think it's like All Things Fun and Fascinating. But so they started working through that, which is great because it's a very gentle entry into what they'll be doing with classical composition, which is Memoria's program. So they won't be coming in completely not knowing anything. They've already learned how to write a paragraph, how to outline, things like that, which will all help them with Memoria's program. So I'm going to be allotting about 45 minutes to an hour worth of time for composition this year for them. And my upcoming 7th grader will again be taking classical composition online. This will be his 2nd year taking composition online with Memoria Academy, but I will still be he'll be working on his paper during this time, and I will be checking it, helping him proofread it and things like that all during this time. So I really like to have my students working on the same thing at the same time so that I can keep my own brain from feeling like it needs to explode. So this is when we'll be doing that. You're probably wondering, you're like, Ashley, you have more than just like 3 or 4 kids. What about all of the other ones? So my 2 daughters who are in high school and my son that's in high school, the vast majority of their work is online. And I also, because they're older and they have proven themselves to be responsible, they get to set their own schedules. They also know that whenever they need help, they can come down and get help from me. But they also understand that if I'm in the middle of teaching someone, they can't just interrupt. So one of the ways that we're going to be making sure that this flows a little bit better is the sticky note system. And this is kind of like the take a number system. So if I'm in the middle of teaching somebody, it could be George in kindergarten, it could be my 4th graders, it could be working with my 7th grader. If I'm in the middle of something, you know, of course I don't want to be interrupted, but I do want to know when someone needs help. So that whoever needs help is going to take a sticky note and just write their name on it and then stick it on the desk beside my chair, so that I know when I'm done helping whoever I'm helping that this child needs help next. So then if it's one of my high schoolers that has gone back upstairs, then I can text that high schooler and say, hey, I can help you now, come on down. So that's just a good way for me to keep track of who needs help, because the worst thing, this is something that I ran into early last year that was frustrating, is that I like, when I'm done with school, I really want to be done with school for the day so that I can focus on other things. And so my brain kind of shuts off at around 8 p.m. to where I don't want to be working on this anymore. My teenagers' brains, that's kind of when they start to wake up. So I like, if they need help, I like to do that earlier in the day, but they also need to know when I'm available for that. So if I know that they need help, I can text them when it's a good time. They can come down, I can help them, I can check a paper, whatever they need. But that's just a way that we have figured out that lets me know that they need it without me being interrupted when I'm actively teaching at the time. Okay, so once composition is over, it's pretty much lunchtime by this time. So from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, my husband, he works at home. He comes inside. He has an office that's in a shed outside. He comes in and I go out. So I get an hour of work time and he has an hour inside with the children, getting their lunch for them. And then he also does elementary science with them. And he just kind of rotates through all of the different Memoria science. There's a wasp on my hydrangeas. Okay. He just rotates through the different sciences. And, you know, we're not really following the lesson plans necessarily. Like, he does all of the work with them and things, but, you know, he'll decide at the beginning of the year which one he wants to start with. And he usually gets through about 2 of those a year. And so that is wonderful because it gives me an hour in the middle of the day where I can think about something else, and it also gives him a chance to be involved in the homeschool. So that has been a fantastic addition to our day. So I know that this is not attainable for everyone. I know that most people's husbands don't work from home, but if you can figure out a way to have your husband involved, if he wants to be. If he doesn't want to be, it's not going to work. But if he wants to be involved, if you can figure out a way to do that, I would highly recommend it. It's been great for us. So if you're hearing all of this and you're thinking to yourself, this could never work in my house, I want to tell you something. I used to think the exact same thing. And that's one of the big reasons why I created my free masterclass, the framework I wish I had 18 years ago when my homeschool was falling apart, so that I could share with you some of the things that I've learned and put into place so that our homeschool day really just works like clockwork. It's free. It's in the description box below. So make sure to check that out after you're done watching this video. Okay, so now it's 1 o'clock. I'm back inside and I make myself a quick lunch, and then we all go into the living room. When I say all of us, I'm talking about my 7th grader and younger. We go into the living room and we have an hour of quiet reading time. Now, this is the time of day when I am usually checking math because I need to stay on top of this. Of course, it doesn't take me a whole hour to check all of the math, but that's what I do first is I check the math so that right after we're done with quiet reading time, the children can correct their math mistakes. What they are usually doing during the school year is they're reading their literature selections or classical studies selections that they have for school. And so they do that for a full hour. After that hour is over, we do 2 things immediately. So the first thing that we do is we go ahead and they take turns doing literature discussion questions with me. And so we do that at the whiteboard. So I'll do the younger kids first, and then my 7th grader will be working on probably correcting his math at that point because I'll just hand him his paper. And so then he'll wait for his turn and then he'll do that. And while he's doing that, my fourth graders correct their math. Now, after we're done with all of the math corrections, I go ahead and teach the next day's lesson to them. So I go through the motions at the whiteboard. We do the exercises on the whiteboard so that they understand any upcoming concepts, and then it will be in their brain for them to start working the next morning. So this works really, really well. After that is done, we move into classical studies. Classical studies is an everyday. It's just usually 2 or 3 days out of the week, but we go ahead and do that, and also any discussion questions that need to be done at the whiteboard as well. For the younger children, what I usually do with the discussion books is I will read the question to them and they will give me their answer. After they give me their answer, if I need to ask any additional questions to pull more of the story out of them, I'll do that. But once we have the answer, the way it's supposed to be, what I usually end up doing is write the answer from the teacher guide on the board with proper, I do it in cursive because I require my students to write in cursive, but I use, of course, proper capitalization and punctuation. So I'm modeling that for them, and then they are looking at the board and writing it properly in their book. This does double duty. They are reinforcing what they're learning from the literature, but they are also reinforcing all of the grammar rules, proper spelling, proper sentence structure. So this is something that's super important. Now, if we're rushed one day, we will do it just verbally, but I try to make sure that we're writing it more often than we are doing it verbally. For my older students, I started doing this last year in 6th grade with Lewis, and I heard this on, I think it was the Classical Etc. podcast. One of their Highlands Latin School teachers was on the podcast, and she was explaining that around 6th grade, what they like to start doing is kind of outlining it for the student. So she'll ask the question and make sure that they have a good understanding of what the answer is, and then she will write, depending on how many sentences the answer is, she'll write keywords on the board from their answer, and then the student will take those keywords and compose the sentences themselves and make sure that they are getting proper capitalization and proper punctuation. So after Lewis would say all of the keywords that I would write on the board, or after he would say his answer, I would write the keywords on the board. He would write his sentences, tell me when he's done, and I would go and look and just make sure, oh, you should probably put a comma here, or this needs to be in quotation marks. But that is teaching him, it's the next step from just copying what is written on the board to, it's synthesizing the information basically. So that is a really good thing to start doing once your students are older. Around the last half of 6th grade was when I started it with him, and he picked it up. Of course, there was a little bit of groaning at first, but it wasn't hard for him because he's been doing this work for the last few years. He's taken classical composition, so it came pretty naturally. I was actually surprised. Okay, so let's talk about why this system works so well in our house. So one of the main reasons why this works so well is that I've been training my children for the last several years to work independently. Now, that does not mean that I just hand them the textbook and hand them the student guide and say, have at it. What it means is they always have work that they can be working on when I'm working with someone else, because I am only one homeschool mom and I have a million children. So, I can't be working simultaneously with my 4th grader and my 7th grader. I can't talk to both of them at the same time. So in order to not waste time and make this take literally all day, they just know if I'm in the middle of explaining something to someone else, they can write their name on the sticky note, work on something else so that they can be done sooner, and then the work gets done. This does take trial and error at the beginning. If your children are used to only being told, do this, do this, do this, and they have to have you right there, it's going to take some training. If your children are used to not doing much all day, if they're used to, if you're trying to reform your homeschool, and last year, they would read for an hour and, maybe journal, it's going to be a bit of a shock, and you're going to have to ease them into it and train them to do this the right way. But that's where the leadership component comes into this. That's why homeschool moms have to be strong leaders. Another reason why this system works so well is because we tackle our most important and our most difficult subjects first. So we get the hard stuff out of the way before lunchtime. If I know that if I can just make sure that we get done with Bible, math, Latin, and composition, that it will be easy to get the literature and the classic studies done the second part of the day. It's so much easier. But if for some reason we get a late start and we don't get composition done in the morning, the chances of us getting that in the afternoon, based on my own results, are probably around 10%, which really, that's not good enough. Composition is a foundational skill that my children need to have and definitely master. So that needs to be done first. So I know if I can get that done first, first before lunch is what I'm talking about, then we've won the day. Okay, so another reason why this works so well is we do not have a child-led home. My children are not the ones setting the expectations or the standards. My husband and I are the ones that set the standards in our home, and everyone else has to rise to meet those standards. So, even the baby, Mary Eleanor, the world does not revolve around her. So she, you're probably wondering, like, Ashley, what do you do with your baby all day? So she is in a play yard at different times. And one of the things too, that if someone's waiting for me and they've gotten all of their independent work done, they'll hop in the play yard with the baby and read her a few books, or, walk her around the house, take her for a walk outside. So she still gets plenty of fun things to do throughout the day, but the world does not revolve around her. Sometimes when, like, she's fussy right now because she's getting teeth and we're having allergy problems right now, so she's got a runny nose, so she's a little bit fussier. So she will sit on my lap, when I need to talk something over with a student or whatever. She'll just sit on my lap and she'll be happy there. I'll give her a toy to hold on to or a book to look at, and she'll just sit there. So it's kind of like, we have to keep going with what we're doing here, and she folds into that instead of us trying to do everything around her. And of course, I use her afternoon nap time to get some stuff done, some teaching done, but I don't just wait until she's napping, because really that just teaches her, I can act however I want to act, as long as I'm up. And that's just really not how we're doing this. So we have non-negotiables in our homeschool, which involve the children being dressed. I know that some of you probably think that I've lost my marbles because I also require a collared shirt, but whatever. I like my children looking professional. This is serious business that we're doing, and I have found personally that if I am dressed for the job that I have before me, it's a lot easier to get in the right mindset. So we wear collared shirts for school. So, we do hard things. We're tackling hard subjects. We're tackling Latin. We're tackling composition and, all of those hard things, classical studies. We start what we finish. If we're going to start it, we are going to finish it. We're going to conquer this homeschool day. We are dominion takers in my house. That's what I'm really raising my children to be. I want them to be dominion takers. So that starts with the day. You have to take dominion over your day. You can't just sit back and let your day happen to you. You have to be the driving force behind what happens in your day. So another thing that's super important is that we have to guard our attitudes. We cannot treat schoolwork like drudgery. It's our duty. It is our duty to develop our mind and our soul and our intellect to the glory of God. And so that starts with me. I cannot expect my children to have a better attitude about academics than I have about teaching them those academics. So if I'm like, oh man, I've got a headache, I really don't want to do this today, my kids are going to pick up on that. No, I can't do that. The better thing to do is say, hey kids, I've got a headache today, but you know what? I'm going to take a Tylenol and we're going to push through this, and we're going to pray that God takes my headache away. But even if he doesn't, we can still do this because God created us to take dominion over these hard things. So we're going to do it anyway. So let's just keep going, and let's maybe keep the volume level a little bit lower so maybe my head doesn't explode. So that's the kind of thing that we need to be modeling for our children. Our children need to see, they don't need mom to be completely stoic and never show any weakness. What they need to know is that, yes, mom has weaknesses, but she pushes through them, and so I can do it too. If my mom can do it, I can do it. We want to be modeling that for them. So that is our homeschool day in a nutshell. It is not always perfect. Most of the time it's peaceful, but some of the times it's not because we've got a lot of people in this house. But it works, and it works really, really well because people understand the expectations here. They know that the order is always going to be the same, and so we are able to accomplish amazing things every single day. So if you want a system for your own homeschool that helps you to operate from a place of proactivity instead of reactivity, again, watch the masterclass. The link is in the description below. It's free, and that will help you get started to building your own homeschool that works like clockwork, and that will help you achieve amazing things every single day. And feel free to drop any questions you have in the comments. If I left anything out of my day, I probably did. I tried to write everything down, but sometimes I forget something. So feel free to leave a comment and ask me a question if there's anything you're not sure about.